The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily represent those of this station or its management.
It's time now for Where You Live with Gene Sullivan, the show that deals with the news and events that affect you the most. Whether you rent or own, live in an HOA, single-family home, or an apartment building, Gene will tackle the issues right where you live. So, from the True North Painting Studios, here is the original Man of Steel, Resolve himself, who stands for truth, justice, and the association way. Here's Gene Sullivan.
Good morning and welcome to Where You Live. I'm Gene Sullivan, and I'm broadcasting from the True North Painting Studios. When you're looking for the right painting contractor, what do you look for? Isn't it someone who will respect you, your time, your property, and your budget? That's what you can expect from True North Painting. Find out more about this exceptional company by going online at truenorthpainting.com. That's trunorthpainting.com, or give them a call at 952-831-1433. I'm also brought to you by the great folks at Extreme Exteriors and American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency. I'd like to also give a shout out to my board op, Christopher Wyatter Huberty. Hi, Chris.
How you doing today, Gene?
I am doing great. And
Great.
you?
I'm great.
Let me ask you, have you heard of the doctrine of sovereign immunity?
I feel like I've heard something close to that.
I think you probably do. You probably know a lot of children's stories. You know the story of the Emperor Has No Clothes?
I do. Made for a good Disney movie, too.
Yeah. Tell a little bit about what was that story about?
Well, I'm basing off the Disney movie, but an emperor, kind of a snobby, rich kid, was turned into a llama, exiled from his village, and basically had to win back good graces and good faith.
Okay. Yes, that was not the original. So I was ready to say it must be true because it's Disney. But in the original story, the Emperor Has No Clothes, what happens is there are some charlatans who end up winning the king's favor, and the king, and so they said, we've woven some material that's so special that the only eye that can even see the material is someone who's truly a king. And so, everybody was, even though there was no clothes, there was nothing. The king said, even though he was wearing nothing now, he's in the nude, he's in the buff. He thought he was splendidly dressed. Everybody else that was close around him was afraid to say the truth because they didn't want to say that they were a less of a person as well. And there is that idea of in sovereign immunity, or in the sovereignty of the crown, the idea that the king could do no wrong. Back years ago in England, if you were driving your horse and carriage and you ended up running over someone, you could be going to jail for that death of that person. But if it were the king's horse and the king's carriage that ran over someone, there's nothing that ever happened because of the sovereignty of the crown. The king can do no wrong. The queen can do no wrong. And there's that idea, and there was that idea in that child's story too. We have that idea embedded, from in our culture and in our country, and with the setup of the government as well. The idea there is a sovereign immunity, the idea that government can do no wrong. And that is going to be part and parcel of the very important story that we're going to be talking about today on Where You Live. And so without further ado, let's begin with that story in Property Management in the News. Property Management in the News is brought to you by Home Furniture and Abbey Floor Coverings. Their showrooms are staffed with professionals who will help you choose what you need to fit both your lifestyle and budget. Whatever you need, chances are they'll have what you're looking for. If you wish to avail yourself of special pricing you won't find anywhere else, all where you live listeners, call Customer Service Coordinator Lori Matson at 952-224-2663. This story that we're talking about comes out of the state of Ohio, and we talked about this story a number of months ago on the show and said that we would be keeping a close eye on what is taking place. If you remember, in the state of Ohio, the Ohio Civil Rights there said that there was an association that they thought was showing discrimination. And why was that? It was only because this condo association had not applied for recertification to be approved for FHA financing. And so there was an individual, a single mother with one child, who said, because the association did not file and try to recertify for FHA certification, the condo association was not approved for that kind of financing. Therefore, this woman was not approved for that type of financing. And she said the reason why I wasn't is because it was a pure discrimination. And so the HUD in the state of Ohio was looking into this and investigating, going after the association. And so this is probably one of the most important stories, I think, of the year, and should have some great concerns for anybody living in an HOA. And that is the question, is having access to an FHA loan a civil right? That is what's happening here in Ohio with that particular condo association. My concern with this whole story is because of the idea of the sovereignty, the sovereign immunity that the government has, the idea that the government, and in all its knowledge in establishing regulatory agencies, that they're always correct, and of course cannot be in the wrong in what they establish and what they define as discrimination and what isn't. And that's a shame, because what happens sometimes in society today, we have, a lot of war on different things. There's been the war on women, the war on drugs. There's a bigger war that's going on right now, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's the war on words, the war on meaning in our society today. It's a very important principle that we teach all our property managers in managing different properties, because when you're managing a property, what you're basically managing are people. And when you're managing people, you're managing expectations. And so there is a principle here that I'd like everybody to remember, and that is whoever gets to the dining room first gets to set the table. And what I mean by that is that if you're the first one to set the table, that means that you kind of determine what plate everybody's going to be eating off of, what utensils everybody's going to be using, what glass everyone is going to be using. And early on here, we have, very carefully with some, a war on words. We have a war in our society taking place where people want to constantly change the meaning of words. They want to constantly change definitions. And it sounds like they're doing so for altruistic reasons, but sometimes it's to try to change the debate, because if you can win by setting the table, now all of a sudden that is the framework everybody is working from. And what happens, unfortunately, and what is a shame, is that some people use that as a way to shut down an opponent from any kind of rebuttal or any kind of argument. And that is probably not can't be any more true than it is in the area of HUD and in what they're using and describing as discrimination. And some of the cases and many of the stories and things that are taking place right now around our country should be of great concern to all of us, because it's a shame because of these war on words, because of changing definitions. What it does is it shuts down an honest and critical debate of ideas and what's going on. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you, my listeners, to please put on your critical thinking hat here today. And I really want you to ask yourselves, as we go through and dissect this story out of Ohio today, ask yourself, is this a case of discrimination that's taking place? Let me ask you this. Is all discrimination bad? Is there anything such as good discrimination? Now, I think there is. I know that sounds kind of provocative, but I would like to share with you what I'm thinking about that. But we need to take a break right now, so let's do that. Don't go away. We've got a lot more of Where You Live after these messages.